afternoon and welcome to today's Way Forward Workshop Leader Lunch Break, where we are thrilled to welcome Sean Terry to the conversation. Across the Midwest, from Chicago to Nashville to Cleveland, Sean Terry has spent his career planning rich urban environments that respect our resources and respond to our needs. And fortunate for us, since January 2020, he has served as Ohio Director for the Trust for Public Land, with more than 2 decades of experience in nonprofit organizations, working with municipalities and forging public-private partnerships. The expertise he brings to this role is vast. For Sean, the work is much more than creating and preserving beautiful spaces that respect and reflect the environment. It is about ensuring a space-based vitality where the voice of the people is at the heart of the policy. Equally as important is that the space is accessible to all who are destined to enjoy it. With every meeting, he questions the impact of his work on environmental sustainability, economic development, bike and pedestrian pathways, and ensuring user-friendly park and trail design. He is a tireless advocate funding for and recognition of the needs of the people in the parks. Part of the impact of his work can be seen with the addition of 1,200 acres to Cuyahoga Valley National Park and new investment in Rockefeller Park. In short, he is laser focused on creating spaces for an equitable quality of life and better health outcomes. This means that every Clevelander should live within a 10-minute walk of a quality park. And yes, as state director, the Land for People mission serves not just our community, but all of our fellow Ohioans. His dream is the boundless creation of parks and protection of land so that everyone is connected to the outdoors. Sean, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for that warm introduction, Marianne, and thank you. It's a full house in here, and I'm seeing some familiar faces and some new ones. So welcome to peers and esteemed members of the Cleveland Leadership Center. As Marianne mentioned, I'm Sean Terry, State Director for Trust for Public Land. I'm really honored to be here with you this afternoon to share a bit about our organization and our impact in Ohio. Before I get started, just a quick scan of the room. I guess feel free to use the thumb up feature if you can, or on the screen as well. How many folks have heard of Trust for Public Land or have visited a legacy TPL project in Ohio? Okay, great. So there is some familiarity. Part of my role as state director is really to just focus on our outreach and visibility, and everything that Marianne mentioned resonates, but it's important with our office being a state-facing office that we really connect in all parts of Ohio. And you'll see shortly the work that we've done is reflective of that. So I'm going to share my screen really quick and talk to you a little bit about our organization. Quick thumbs up when you can see my screen. All right. So 50 years of impact. Trust for Public Land is a national nonprofit. We're a conservation organization, and our core mission is to connect everyone to the outdoors. We were founded in 1972, headquartered in San Francisco, California. And since that time, TPL has been a recognized leader in the conservation movement for the past 50 years. Here's a photo of some of our earlier work. 50 years ago was a long time, and that was such a pivotal time in our country. We were really at an inflection point where communities were starting to experience change and dealing with 10 and 20-year residue from the civil rights era and white flight and suburban sprawl. And so TPL's origin story is really rooted in the change at that time. Our founders recognized the need to protect natural spaces in and around cities. And in addition to that, they found it important to respond to the environmental injustices in those communities like Oakland, California, that were dealing with the leave behinds of a shift in dynamic, a shift in community. And so fast forward a few years, that intentionality began to spread outside of California. And we quickly grew to the Midwest, bringing TPL to Ohio in 1974. So we're actually one of the oldest field offices in Trust for Public Land. Here, our staff really came together with residents at a time when the focus was on safeguarding Cuyahoga Valley as it transitioned from a national recreation area to part of the national park system. And we brought in those lessons learned from California and best practice in conservation to help with that. Our core values really reflect TPL's body of work. We leverage our 10-minute walk initiative to promote access to parks as a catalyst for physical and mental health. We use data to qualify and target communities most in need and reduce the disparities while increasing equity. We strengthen communities by investing in natural resources and promoting climate resilience. And we center community throughout that entire process as a core practice. We want to be fostering resident input and creating resident empowerment. And so we do that, and we apply those core values across our mission using 4 priority outputs: land protection, trails and greenways, parks, and schoolyards. And we've been on this walk for 50 years because we believe that access to the outdoors is a fundamental right for everyone. And people need this access to health benefits like never before. I think COVID taught us a lot, and we learned a lot through that transition in 2019 and 2020. Here's a quick glance of our project history, and you can see, the reach of TPL's work in Ohio. We've protected over 100 projects to date, nearly 18,000 total acres protected. We've connected over 100,000 people to the outdoors. And in Cuyahoga Valley alone, we've done 20 projects and have really aided in the expansion of the national park. And I think it's evident, and most stakeholders that I interact with know TPL for our land conservation work. But I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about park equity. In 2017, we launched the 10-minute walk campaign nationally. It's a campaign designed to access parks within a 10-minute walk of home. And Cleveland was an early adopter city in that movement. That process opened the door for TPL to start working really closely with the city to understand the challenges around our park system. And there were some really pressing challenges that we were dealing with. We needed to understand why residents felt like they didn't understand how the machine functioned and how they can contribute and be a part of the parks dialogue. At the time, we were taking a worst first approach to selecting and investing in parks and on city assets. And that old school way of thinking really left some communities with unmet needs and really lacking in that understanding. And we began plugging away at that park equity gap. Here's a snapshot of Park Score. We released this in 2020 every year. It's the national ranking, top 100 cities. And Cleveland has always hovered around the top 25 city in Park Score. And I think some of it is skewed because we have such an amazing metro parks and they provide access as well. But we really wanted to be intentional about closing the gap and understanding ways that we can help improve our park score and our walkshed. Currently, we are at about 83% of the residents in the city have access to a park within a 10-minute walk. But there are a lot of questions around, how restrictive the experience is, or how underwhelming the experience may be in certain parks if they're not well programmed or outfitted with amenities. And so this dialogue has continued. Last year, we launched a park equity accelerator with the city of Cleveland, and some high-level takeaways were, one, we wanted to revisit our own reporting. We understood that there were park equity gaps. Something was missing. Admittedly, we didn't have, neighborhoods like Central as a higher priority. So we needed to reset our thinking. We needed to advocate for a department reprisal and in a way that equity can be centered in the decision-making. And the work of the Parks and Green Space Coalition since that time has really created a space where resident advocates can start to express their voice and make their demands heard. We've launched, or the city has launched, its first ever Parks Master Plan, and TPL has worked closely with the city on that process as a nonprofit technical advisor. We facilitated dialogue with residents and educational institutions, and we brought in our conservation finance team to really help us understand what other cities are doing well, what can we mimic, including what can we strategize around from a funding standpoint so that investment looks beyond just the next round of bonds, but can look at innovation and innovative ways to fund strategies in parks. And most importantly, and most recently, we brought our national motto, Community Schoolyards, to Ohio. Here, our colleague Kayla and Danielle are doing a quick assessment of some existing play structure in East Cleveland. A lot of our playgrounds look like this: asphalt, really locations where there's a lot of stormwater runoff, and we want to be capturing that stormwater. We want to be creating natural shading and green infrastructure so that we can dissipate heat as opposed to intensify it. And we want to usher in complementary programming that address needs like food apartheid and lack of food access in neighborhoods. And Kayla's done some dynamic work. We're happy. Many of you may have seen our design unveil in December in East Cleveland. Our goal is to take playgrounds that look like this and convert them to that. And that's in a nutshell, really what we're most excited to bring here to Ohio as our program expands. So I'll pause here, just a couple of calls to action as we transition to warm weather months. I'll encourage folks on the call to visit our social media handles. There's tons and tons of information that you can glean nationally, as well as what we're up to here in Cleveland. Tomorrow, we'll be launching TPL's podcast, People, Nature, Big Ideas, where we explore the human connection in the natural environment. I was thrilled to be featured along with community partner and fellow BIPOC natural enthusiast, Erica Hood from SciAT. So we'll be talking a lot about the Cleveland landscape in tomorrow's episode, and feel free to visit the podcast link to learn more and check that out. And then lastly, there's a ton of spring and summer activities that TPL is involved with. If you're someone who's passionate about birding or wants a passive experience, we'll be sponsoring a series of hikes beginning next Saturday through the summer. If riding your bike and seeing other communities is your cup of tea, we'll be participating in Celebrate Trails Day on April 27th, which will usher in a more comprehensive series of ride with the mayors of our college communities, sponsored by Cuyahoga Greenway Partners. TPL is a member of that organization. And lastly, if you're interested in volunteering and just rolling up your sleeves, we'll be doing a ton of volunteer opportunities beginning in April, Earth Day, through the month of June. So feel free to reach out to us if you are interested in learning about how you can participate, or you have ideas that you'd like to share with us for your organization. So with that, I will stop sharing and invite any questions that you may have.
Sean, thank you so much. Let's start with talking about how you engage residents. What are some of the tools that your organization uses to build trust with residents and engage them to get their feedback?
First and foremost, it starts with understanding the pace of community. And part of that is just creating an open dialogue and building trust. It doesn't come easy. It takes different shapes depending on, the needs of that particular neighborhood. I mentioned Ebony and Erica from SciAT earlier. Part of our strategy is working with those who've been in the thick of it longer than we have. We're a national organization. Sometimes when organizations come into communities, there's a lot of preconceived notions, and we come in trying to be too prescriptive. But Trust for Public Land really believes an intentional community centering is needed in order to really get to the actual needs, and then work collaboratively to address the challenge and uplift residents and stakeholders in that process. So partnering is huge for us. We always look for those partners who reflect the same core values that we do, and we try to move at an intentional pace and space.
When you look at the various public green spaces you're working on, how do you work to address safety within those spaces?
It's a huge dynamic that comes up. We hear a lot from our peers across the country. Cities are dealing with similar challenges. And what we've learned is that, activating the space is the best way to ensure safety. Folks have a lot of pride. I learned I'm not from Cleveland, but I'm a Midwest kid, and I quickly resonated with the values of this community. There's a lot of pride in our public green spaces. And the more that we can be programming them and activating them and creating vibrant opportunities for people to use them as they're designed, the safer they'll be inherently.
And you mentioned the 10-minute walk to a quality park. How do you define park in that context to be able to measure the 10-minute access?
Yeah, our data collects input from both the city of Cleveland and Metro Park. So in the case of Cleveland, all of our public green spaces that are managed by the city of Cleveland, as well as park spaces that are managed by Cleveland Metro Parks within the city of Cleveland jurisdiction are counted. We've been challenged somewhat about how we measure like that access point. Like getting to a park is just part of the challenge, but where does that take you to? And I mentioned our interface with educational institutions. Last year, we partnered with Cleveland State University to actually get out to roughly 90% of the city of Cleveland assets. And we interacted with their students. And one of the things that they mentioned, which I think is really well stated and pointed, is that, you know, activity is that most people are drawn to is happening in the center of a park. So we should be rethinking about, you know, the amenities and where we're drawing folks to. And when we measure 10-minute walk, we should be thinking about not just the access point, but the center or the hub of activity in parks.
We've had a couple questions come in inquiring about various parks and whether or not TPL is involved in there. So what can you share about any work you might be doing with Forest Hills Park in East Cleveland, Cleveland Heights, and potentially Rockefeller Park?
Absolutely. Really excited about the opportunity in Forest Hill Park. Is such a dynamic space, such a large space. And on the East Cleveland side, especially, one that is in need of, you know, there's been a lot of deferred maintenance that needs to happen. I won't get into, you know, the backstory too much on that because there's a lot of, you know, stuff politically that needs to unfold. But in terms of the opportunity for residents to activate that space, to connect it to existing school campuses and to really be a hub for resident need, we're really excited to play a role in that. I know that there is a existing movement in East Cleveland where residents have been sort of shepherding a lot of the maintenance and programming for years. And so again, we don't want to come in overly prescriptive. We want to be contributing and not dictating. And so I'm really excited about the future for East Cleveland in that regard, and excited to grow our community schoolyards program in East Cleveland at the same time. Rockefeller Park is such a staple for our community. It's the park that really, it was the first park that I experienced in Cleveland, even before we moved here. You know, I was the drive into Cleveland and experiencing the city and seeing Rockefeller in the summer. Yeah, I just lit up. Adjacent to the Rockefeller Park along Sawinski is a school that we hope to work in. We're in the process of working with our national lead to do an assessment on Cleveland schools, and that one is one that really is a high priority for us. But there is a trail that is in the process of being designed. There's been a first phase, a naturalized node along Sawinski as well. So we see that that area of the park really is the central space, a gateway for access for residents in Glenville and Huff who've been disconnected for a number of reasons for generations.
You mentioned needing partners and collaborators in this space. So what organizations do you most frequently collaborate with, and what type of partners might you be seeking?
Yeah, so we're a steering member of the Parks and Green Space Coalition. Roughly 3 years ago now, we started working on a framework for prioritizing parks in Cleveland. We knew that there was going to be change and administrative change happening in City Hall, and we felt that the time was right to really push for parks to be a greater priority. So our organization came together with Land Studio, CNT, Western Reserve, a number of resident stakeholders, neighborhood connections, and we said, let's start to understand what we do well and ways that we can complement one another, while also advocating for parks to be a priority land use in the city's future. And so, as a steering group, we've been able to do some amazing things. We've launched a park action guide to offer residents an opportunity, a blueprint, if you will, on how to engage and where to engage in City Hall if they are interested in doing projects in their own respective community park. We've seen our membership grow incrementally over the last year and a half, and we've been fostering a space for a learning exchange to take place. We've held learning exchanges virtually on like a quarterly basis, and Tate, who's here on the call with us, is actually going to be taking a group down to a national park conference in Atlanta next week to learn more about how we can grow the coalition movement here in Cleveland. Really excited about the work that he's been doing.
As you look across the landscape here and the work that you're doing, what do you see as the biggest challenge to creating more parks in our community?
We're an older city with older infrastructure, and so you can't. It takes a lot of investment and a lot of time to course correct decisions that were made that create barriers to the park. So redlining comes up. We can't alter where the highways are located and infrastructure is located. But what we can do is be more creative with what understanding what incentives residents need to get to the park, and working collaboratively with the city around rethinking how programming and smaller scale investment, gateways, how they all can contribute to inviting spaces. And with that comes the opportunity to envision parks as more than just places for people to play. There are opportunities for us to mobilize when we have emergencies. During COVID, everyone was scrambling to figure out how to access resources. Parks can be mobilized in a way that can accelerate that and address needs in an emergency. We're in a city that is also experiencing change due to climate. We have more people moving to Cleveland, so the demand for more park spaces are going to increase. And as our weather anomalies happen more frequently, parks can also mobilize around sort of disaster readiness. So what do we do if we have a storm surge and we lose power and people need places to cool off in the summer months? You have parks. What do we do when we have a windstorm or a tornado touches down nearby and we have felled trees that are blocking roads and public works needs to come in? Parks can be mobilized in a way to sort of assist in that strategy. So thinking beyond just recreation, but really as an access point for resources and community needs.
Is TPL involved in any of the work around reforesting the Forest City?
Absolutely. I'm personally on the Cleveland Tree Coalition as a executive member, steering committee. We are always touting innovation at TPL, and we're excited to pursue a demonstration project this year with Slavic Village. We're going to be exploring the benefits of phytoremediation. We know that Cleveland is a city with lots of toxicity in our soils and lead and heavy metals. Some other Rust Belt cities have explored phytoremediation and have seen impacts with poplar tree grows, reducing toxicity in their soils, and we're excited to bring that innovation to Cleveland. We're working with Slavic Village Development right now to select a site, and we anticipate trees will be in the ground in October. And if that proof of concept, or when that proof of concept bears, we quickly hope to scale up to other neighborhoods.
What differences have you observed in your work here as compared to your work on prior projects in Nashville and Chicago?
Good question. For me, it boils down to the people. I mentioned again coming to Cleveland and visiting before moving here. I was unaware of the Forest City nickname, but it quickly I got it when I came here, and that Rockefeller Park experience had a lot to do with that. But just seeing so many folks from community of all walks living a very active lifestyle one where, you know, the fishing community, people running, cycling, shout out to Bike Cleveland. They do some amazing work to actually showcase parts of Cleveland that folks may otherwise not experience. And that vitality, that vibrance really resonated with me. And as I entered my role and started to interact with stakeholders, and I yeah, I chuckle when I watch football on Sunday. There was a running episode with Baker Mayfield at one point and showing how people cut their grass, and but like all of that stuff really resonated with me as authenticity and how people move in Cleveland. And so I think, you know, the goals are really audacious, but when I sit in on a Parks and Green Space Coalition meeting and hear from resident stakeholders about what they desire to see and how they desire to be involved and they want a voice at the table and decision making, like that really resonates for me is true. And I'm just excited to be in a position to help, you know, usher that forward.
Looking at the development that is in the works around many of our waterfronts, whether it's the river or the lakefront, is TPL involved or partnering with entities around that development?
Yeah, we're often brought in as a advisor or steering member to contribute our expertise, but there's so much more that TPL can bring to the table, particularly with our national reach. So I'm hopeful that we will have opportunities. I know that there are a lot of signature projects that are currently underway that, you know, started to materialize before I stepped into this role. And you know, those projects, oftentimes when we see the headlines, we don't necessarily understand the work or the amount of work that went into it prior to, you know, that story or that news clipping. We're not trying to be overly prescriptive. We definitely have a lot to offer. You know, hearing from our, you know, leaders both in the city and the county, we understand that we're in a rare geography and that, you know, access to the lakes are going to become more and more critical for not just our region, but for the country. And so I'm in a opportunity where I can leverage TPL and bring in national perspective, but we as a region can share that perspective outwardly as well and be impacting so many other parts of the country. And again, I mentioned climate migrancy is real. You know, our colleagues in severe weather states are often, you know, talking to us about how populations in their cities are already starting to shift. So it's very much a real thing that will impact us in the near future.
Sean, as you look ahead for the next 3 to 5 years, what excites you most about what's on the docket for TPL?
Yeah, first and foremost, our work in community schoolyards. We are in the infancy stages of our program, but we are so excited. We have a national decision tool that has really shaped what the districts of highest need look like in Ohio. And so we have our wish list of school districts that we want to be expanding our program to. And our current project at Caledonia School in East Cleveland will be going to groundbreaking later this spring and through next year with construction. Really excited to have that milestone moment where we can actually do the ribbon cutting and celebrate that as a showcase piece for the residents in East Cleveland, but then also as a demonstration for other school districts to see what our capabilities are. We've done over 300 schoolyards nationally, but really bringing that home to Ohio is what I'm most excited for. And then our land protection work. For a number of reasons, we have been kind of slow to do land transactions, and staffing had a lot of to do with that. But we are in great hands with Isaac Smith, who runs our land protection program, comes with an extensive background, knows Ohio, is from Ohio, and he and I are a lot alike. We think a lot alike. And so I'm really excited to work with him to really bring vitality back to our land protection work.
Right. Sean, thank you so very much for all that you are doing to create beautiful and green spaces available to all of us. And thanks for all of your advocacy to create a greener tomorrow for our next generations. We're truly, truly grateful. We're glad you chose Cleveland.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marianne. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Again, feel free to reach out to us if you all would like to see more of our, I know this is a quick snapshot, but to learn more about our work and ways to engage, we look forward to hearing from you.